When you go to a theme park, you're probably thinking about how many roller coasters you can get on and what experiences they have that will wow you. After all, the theme park should be doing everything they can to wow you because you're their customer and give you a good enough day that will leave you counting the days until you can come back. But then the park's vision is tested as the reality of the world kicks in. Bills need to be paid, rides need to be fixed, people need to be trained, and through the strain of it all, whether intentionally or not, sometimes the customers go from feeling like the park's special guests to the park's enemy. They're no longer working for you, but in spite of you. Today, we're going to be looking at everything theme parks do that make you feel like the enemy, and in some cases, how to remedy that. Buckle up. I didn't want to skimp on any information, so this will be a long video, but I promise it's concise and will be worth your while. I also want to add a disclaimer before I begin. You might hear me call out Silverwood, Knott's Berry Farm, and Magic Mountain a few times as examples of some of these pain points. I love all these parks and I really support them, and I'm not calling them out because I think poorly of them, just because they're parks that I've gone to the most frequently or more recently, so examples from them are fresher in my mind. As you watch, think about your home park and let me know in the comments after which of these things have happened to you at your home park, and if your park is great overall, what do you think they did to fix or avoid these issues? The first few enemy makers fall under what I call the hostage mentality. This is what happens when theme parks make a decision based solely on the fact that you as the customer have no other option. You are stuck in the park and you have no alternative, so you may as well just give them your money. Number 1, expensive parking. I understand that any park would be a fool to not charge for parking lots that they provide, but $45 for one vehicle full of guests who already paid full price for tickets? Come on. That is a perfect way to make sure that the guests feel like you're only rewarding their loyalty with fees that they cannot escape. Number 2, not letting food in the park, only to charge super high prices for food. This is one of the ones that actually bugs me the most. Charging high prices for food is alright with me if people have another option, because that way, if people buy it, you know that the food is at least worth their money and you're doing a good job. But when you have a strict no food in the park policy, even for little kids, then charge prices so high it's like you deep fried your food in liquid gold, that does two things. First, it makes guests feel like you have to starve them in order to get them to buy your food. And second, it worsens the quality of your food over time because hungry people will eat food whether it's 5-star or 1-star. So you may think your restaurant is succeeding because people are paying for your food, when in reality it's gotten worse every year. In a park, however, where people can bring their own food in, like in Lagoon they let you wheel in full coolers full of lunches, then you have introduced competition into your theme park, and therefore incentivize your chefs and restaurants to create something people want to buy. And fun fact, people enjoy things far more when they want to buy them than when they have to buy them. Number 3, forcing people to pay for ride lockers. I understand that some rides are unsafe if people have loose articles on board and that lockers can significantly improve dispatch times, but saying a signature attraction is included with the price of admission, then making it mandatory to get a ride locker for your cell phone, and then charging $2 for that locker, while it's only a small fee, it means that the attraction isn't actually included with the price of admission. It's included with the price of admission plus $2. And it's funny how even $2 can be frustrating when you're forced to pay it. Most theme parks I've been to have realized this is an issue with guests and have since made the ride lockers free, which I think is the right approach. Number 4, very far away bathrooms. I think putting bathrooms really far away falls into the hostage mentality because the line of thought feels like, well, they're in the park and they're not going to pee their pants, so it doesn't change anything if we don't have a bathroom in this part of the park, they'll figure it out. The bottom line with the hostage mentality is this: when you hold people hostage and force them to do things because there is no other option, they'll probably end up doing what you want. But many of them won't return somewhere where they feel like they're going to be held hostage again. Find a park that treats you like a guest, not like a hostage. The next group of enemy makers falls under the bucket of poor communication, either because it's hard to communicate clearly or people just don't want to for their own benefit. So number 5, not communicating openly when rides have extended closures. This is pretty straightforward, but sometimes this is the result of people being afraid you won't give them your money if they know not everything is as advertised. Let's say you're going to Magic Mountain and your favorite attraction, Tatsu, has been down for some parts replacements all week. Some parks are great about sharing that information to avoid unmet expectations for guests, while others might obscure or avoid sharing that information to not lose crowds. When you don't tell customers that an expected part of their upcoming experience is knowingly not going to be available, that's what you call a bait and switch. and guests start to feel less like people parks are trying to entertain and more like people they're trying to trick into giving them their money. Number 6, not communicating when rows of coaster trains are closed. This is a minor inconvenience, but you probably know the feeling. You finally made it to the front of the line and chosen your row. You're sitting in row 3 and your friends are directly behind you in row 4. Then comes the train, and you're about to load when you realize that your row in the train is roped off because of a maintenance issue. That's alright, that stuff happens, but because you didn't know ahead of time, now you need to wait one more cycle for the next train. And your friends are now riding in the train ahead of you because their row wasn't off limits, and off they go, never to see you again, until the ride's over. Number 7, not communicating about restaurant or activity closures. Similar line of thought here, but many parks are really good about telling you when their rides are closed, but not great about telling you when their restaurants are closed. So you feel a little bit frustrated when you walk to one end of the park for your chicken and waffles, only to find out that that restaurant has been closed the entire day and nothing online told you about it. Number 8, not opening rides when the park opens without notifying guests. Sometimes parks choose not to begin a roller coaster running until an hour or two after the park opens. Not because of maintenance issues, but often because it's a slower day in the park, so the park plans to run the coaster for less time to cut costs. But what makes you feel like the enemy of the park is that they didn't tell you. For example, at Fiesta Texas, the boardwalk area of the park doesn't open until 1 p.m. But that's a clear policy that they effectively communicated, so it's not a problem. On the other hand, in a park, when they don't tell you, it's just frustrating, and it doesn't feel like a kind of baby version of bait and switch. Number 9, not having a single source of truth. Don't you ever just wish your home park had a better source of truth for obscure questions and policies? Like, what's a policy for bringing food into the park? What's a policy for parent swap for parents with toddlers trying to ride big coasters? Do water rides like the log ride close early? Some parks like Silverwood have a great FAQ that clearly states their policy, and other parks, I feel like even employees don't know their policies, which brings up another issue. Sometimes you know the park policy, you found it out, and like riding a roller coaster with glasses is okay if you have a secure strap, but then you have a hard time because the workers are unaware of that rule, and you need to go do all sorts of things to have permission from them to do something that the park already told you was okay. Number 10, advertising experiences that are unreliable. Another form of bait and switch that gets me the most riled up is advertising something that, while is the park ideal, is just not the accurate general experience. For example, if you are a park, which shall remain nameless, and have a roller coaster, which shall remain nameless but rhymes with twisted molasses, and this coaster's biggest selling point is that it has many dueling elements as you race side by side, then when guests show up, they are going to be most anticipating that selling point, the race. But what if I told you in the last 6 years of riding this mystery coaster, I haven't raced once? Sounds like the advertisement of a racing coaster is a little outdated. People have told me before in this particular case that you have a better chance of racing if you ride in the morning, but still, even if this ride races 20% of the time, advertising a racing coaster is, in my mind, misleading and dishonest. And it is a point of frustration for the people who are hoping for that experience. And if you start to advertise honestly, it'll hurt the park, but also incentivize them to improve the experience so they can advertise honestly. Anyway, that's just an example, but the experience not being advertised could be something else, like the fire being turned off on X2, or the blasters not working on Primordial at Lagoon. This is a perfect example of raising guests' expectations really high, then just giving them the normal experience. That's a lot worse than just giving them the normal experience to start with without advertising any kind of something extra. For example, I think I would have significantly enjoyed every ride on Twisted Colossus in the last 6 years if I was not expecting and hoping a race every time. Number 11, false-ish advertising on prices. This concern is more about clickbait prices than dishonest prices. For example, there's this deal that you can have a membership to a park for $12 a month. Sounds great, but then when you click on it and you realize you need to make an initial payment of $20. That's not that big of a deal, but I am personally not a fan of anything that advertises something just the way they need to for you to click on it, and then once you're hooked, they give you the more accurate picture. That's also why most titles of YouTube videos bug me. Most people will choose a title that people will click on even if it doesn't describe their content accurately. Number 12, quick decisions without much time for guests. Probably the easiest way to make enemies quick is by dramatically altering guest experience without giving guests warning or feeling like they're involved in the process. One of the most famous cases of this was King Dakau's abrupt demolition. Rest in peace. It felt sort of like Air Force One with such a short notice, but at least people had a little time to travel around the country to Georgia for the last ride. I never rode King to Caw, but it sounds like people are still harboring some resentment towards Six Flags for that quick decision that gave them no time to react. Another example was Six Flags' quick decision to cancel their Holiday in the Park events at Great Adventure and Over Georgia last year without giving any warning. It's understandable that financial issues can lead to unforeseen problems and sometimes even changes to promises made. But when you avoid interaction with guests during these times just because it would be awkward, you only alienate them further. Okay, this next is a smaller umbrella, but parks make enemies out of guests when they fail to enforce the rules that were designed to protect their guests in the first place. There are two things that come to mind here. Not punishing line jumpers. I've heard this complaint mostly at Knott's Berry Farm, that line jumping is horrible, and no one does anything. How do the guests feel? Well, they feel like the park would rather avoid confronting and punishing line jumpers than defend the families who are waiting their turn. It's like if you get robbed, but the police officers don't want to help you catch the guy. You feel stuck in a system that's broken and designed to let the respectful people get walked all over. If anyone has an example of how a park took care of and fixed line jumping problems, please let me know, because I've been thinking about that a lot and I'm curious how that went. Allowing things like teen takeovers. This is similar to line jumping, but teen takeovers have been a huge and common problem in theme parks, especially this year throughout the United States. Many parks have had to close early due to hundreds of teens getting involved in fights. Magic Mountain had a huge problem with this sort of thing, especially in the early 2000s. And I remember their new park president, who came in to try and fix things in 2009, said something like, "By not doing anything about this, we rejected and alienated our most important customer, the mom." And he was spot on. When parks don't take control of their park, families who want nothing to do with the violence and disorder are going to leave and not come back because they feel like the theme park they love won't protect them. I think Hershey Park did something brave this year to let families know that they were their first priority. On opening day, there was a teen takeover that led to early park closure as hundreds of teens were involved in physical fights. Hershey Park swiftly worked with the police to catch and charge over 50 of these, and then enforced a strict chaperone policy. Good for them, forcing the perpetrators to finally take responsibility. Okay, this next group of enemy makers is for policies or pricing plans that alienate the average guest. Instead of offering a premium experience for guests who want to pay more, it can sometimes feel like you're forcing the average guest to feel more like a peasant and have an inconvenient experience unless they cough up some more cash. Fast Pass mismanagement. One example is poor Fast Pass line management. When you funnel in Fast Pass members as more or as often as the guests in the normal queue, a line that looks like it's 15 minutes of a wait to the guest can easily become an hour. And you know it's a problem when the Fast Pass stops feeling like what you buy when you want to move a little faster and more like what you have to buy if you want a shot of riding your favorite rides. Some parks have even started calling the normal lines the standby lines, which gives the message, "Oh yeah, we'll let you in when there's room for you, you peasants." Especially anytime someone walks through the exit to take your row. You know the feeling. You and your friends are waiting for row 1 and row 2, but right before the gate opens, 2 people come through the Fast Pass lane up through the exit, and obviously they choose the front row. You can almost hear someone yelling at you over the intercom, "Wait a few more minutes, you peasant!" To make matters worse, your friends in row 2 might get separated from you because now their row is still available. That means they're either going to jump in and abandon you, or they're going to have to do some quick talking to get someone to jump in ahead of them, or leave the row empty. Fast passes, if not managed properly, go from being a way to offer guests more to being a way for guests to stop being offered less. One example of a park where just paying the base fee makes you feel like you're only getting a fraction of the experience is at my local water park, Splash Summit. The price of a ticket is relatively cheap, but when you enter, unless you purchase the wristband, you can only ride half the slides there. You need a wristband to ride every slide that requires a tube, for context. If you don't have one, just body slides for you, you peasant. The wristband is only an extra $6, so it's not that bad, but it's the way that it makes you feel is the problem. The sad thing is, I think this was actually a policy invented by Splash Summit to make it more cost-effective for families. Here's what I mean. Many families will visit that park with little kids who can't ride most of the slides. So one of the parents will stay with the kids while the other kids run off and ride the rides. So management was nice enough to, hypothetically, reduce the park ticket prices by $6. So people who just want to enjoy the kiddie pools, lazy river, and wave pool don't have to pay for a full experience that they won't be eligible for, while the older kids pay the original normal price to have the full experience. The park just saved the average family some money by not charging them for experiences that they wouldn't use. But if a theme park is going to make a move to help families, it is very important to make sure that people see the good in your approach, or an act of goodwill can easily be misinterpreted as a greedy upcharge. There's little more sad than seeing a park like Splash Summit make a decision to help families, and then see guests who don't have the full picture, like me, accuse them of greed for it. Not having experiences that don't require a line. And since we've talked about how difficult it is to enjoy the park if you don't have a fast pass, if there's nothing you can do in a park that doesn't require you to wait in a long line, you'll probably feel a little like an enemy to the park. Knott's Berry Farm notoriously has heavy crowds the entire day and long lines, but they also have a large ghost town that people can explore and enjoy freely without having to stand in line for an hour. When parks make experiences that everyone can enjoy at the same time, like parades, heavily themed areas, and performances, they do stir-crazy guests a huge favor. Next up is wasting your time. The last specific chunk of enemy makers falls under the category of inefficiency. When you feel like the park is operating below their potential at your expense because of cost cutting, poor training, or apathy. And you become the enemy because the corners cut by the park are cutting directly into your experience, and you just get a feeling that the park is wasting your time. Not allowing single riders. Single rider lines, when managed well, can improve guest experience, give guests more options for riding a ride, and improve dispatch times. I understand some people aren't comfortable with sharing the row with someone else, and if that's the case, ride operators can just make it their policy to ask, "Hey, are you okay if he rides with you?" as they file people in from the single rider line. But when a park has no way to do it, you feel left behind. This is even more painful on coasters that have rows 4 wide, like a B&M floorless coaster, or 7 wide, like a B&M dive coaster. Sometimes you'll see trains go out with 3 open seats when poorly managed, just because there are only groups of 4. Another coaster model that this is painful on is the RMC single rail coaster, because every row only contains 1 seat. So the very back seat can be frequently left empty when no one is looking for single riders. I want to give a shout out to Stunt Pilot at Silverwood. When we were there on our last visit, the ride operators called out for single riders every time, and that helped loading be way more efficient. Not allowing re-rides. One move theme parks can make to serve coaster enthusiasts is to increase re-rideability for guests. That either means making it short and easy to return from the exit to the entrance, or making policies that allow guests to not even exit the platform if there's no one in line and they want to ride again. Most of the time, it really just depends on who's operating the ride, but it really is unfortunate when you finish a ride and no one is going to ride in your row, so you try to ride again, but the ride operator says you have to leave and walk around the entrance to ride again. That makes sense, but that happened to us just recently on Tremors at Silverwood. There were 3 open rows, but we weren't allowed to ride in any of them, so that was a bummer. Imagine trying to re-ride Goliath also, if you had to exit and re-enter every time. With how long the queue is, it takes so long, it would probably be like a 15-minute wait with no line. Slow operations in general. Not much to say here. When operations are slow, like on Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm or Apocalypse at Magic Mountain, you just feel a little less important, because a sharp ride operator could change an hour-long wait to a 30-minute wait. Only running 1 train on slow days. This is actually one of the biggest enemy makers in my book, and I think the problem that gave me the idea of this video. On slow days, many parks will intentionally run only 1 train to cut costs, and it makes sense from a managerial standpoint. Why would I run 2 trains if the line is only 15 minutes long? I could save tons of money. Yeah, but the problem with that is a line half as long will take twice as long as it should. So if I come to a park on a weekday to avoid the crowds, I still wait just as long in lines that look short because they're all moving half as fast. This creates enemies because you're trying to turn your slow day into a slow line for everyone. I understand the motivations here, but I feel like a park really cares about consistently providing exceptional customer service experiences when they run 2 trains no matter what, even on a slow day. Even though I feel like Magic Mountain does the 1 train ops thing a lot, I want to give them a shout out and a lot of credit, because at our most recent visit, it was a super slow and empty day, but almost all the coasters ran 2 trains the entire day, even Revolution, which basically had no line the whole day. So kudos to them, because that made the day a lot better. And it's also just a great way to make guests feel like you care about their experience more than just the numbers on your spreadsheet. Any line that moves sluggishly slow for whatever reason. One part of experience design in a theme park is to make guests waiting for rides either frequently or always be moving, or always be experiencing something. One of the best things Disneyland does in their queues is they turn them into part of the experience. Rise of the Resistance is a great example. It's hard to say when the line ends and when the ride starts. Fiesta Texas is also surprisingly great at this. When we visited, we saw that Poltergeist had its queue turned into a haunted house, and Dr. Diabolical's Drop of Doom tells riders the story of the Doctor while they're waiting in line, and Joker's Carnival of Chaos had its line turned into a funhouse. On the flip side, theme parks should try to avoid guests at any time think something like, in Roller Coaster Tycoon, "This line hasn't moved in ages." A genius of a park gets rid of waiting and turns it into part of the experience. A park making enemies lets waiting be waiting and sometimes hardly moving at all. Poor customer support and long wait times. This is pretty straightforward, but it shouldn't be too hard to implement callbacks, which is where you just press a button and instead of waiting 3 hours with music on the phone, you wait 3 hours and then they call you back and then talk to you on customer service. I think most people like talking to real people when they're trying to sort out a customer service issue, but listening to the same music on loop for 3 hours shouldn't be a requirement. So I think if you implement callbacks, you can immediately improve your guest experience, and it's pretty simple. Chatty ride operators who aren't dispatching trains quickly. This is similar to my sluggish loading concern, but when you catch ride operators goofing off and chatting when there is loading and unloading to be done, you feel a little bit like you come in second, and you're the enemy because the guests are no longer the priority, but the thing getting in the way of the operator's fun conversations, especially when you're trying to race on Twisted Colossus and you know every second counts. Failing to fill rows on empty trains. As someone who cares way too much about operational efficiency, trains being sent out with empty rows just about kills me. It especially makes guests feel like the enemy when you're there and you're pointing it out and you're trying to fill an empty row and you're turned down. Then you're forced to watch a train do a full circuit knowing that a few more people could have made it and the line could have gone a little faster. A lot of times this happens when groups are trying to ride together, so they leave rows empty in front of them to line everybody up. There are plenty other scenarios, but sharp ride attendants are always looking for empty rows and moving things around so no row on a train goes wasted. I mentioned that this happened on Tremors. Somehow, even with a 10-minute line, there were 3 rows that didn't get filled on one train. Oftentimes, I'm spotting empty rows on a coaster from farther back in the line and trying to point them out to the people closer to the train. And sometimes I'm able to alert people enough that they fill the rows, and other times I'm able to get up there and fill the empty row. Other times I just have to sit there and watch helplessly as the inefficiency prevails. Making it harder to enjoy the park. So finally, here are some last enemy makers that I didn't feel fit into any categories. Inability to purchase photos and other things. Sometimes it's a sad day when you're a paying customer who wants to buy something but you can't. You'd think most parks would make it easy for customers to pay, but not always. This example is from Silverwood, and we got a ride on Tremors, and it was the first roller coaster for my niece and nephew. We love the picture and we're going to come back and purchase it that night. But at Silverwood, there is no place by the front to purchase pictures. We had to do it at the gift shop of Tremors. The only issue was that Tremors closed 3 hours early that day with no explanation, and the gift shop closed too. We left without buying the picture, and I called when the park opened the next day to see if I could still purchase it because the gift shop of Tremors closed early. Nope, they delete all the pictures at the end of the day. Very sad, because that picture would have meant a lot to our first-time riders. This is just one example, but it goes a long way when parks have something in place that makes it a little more straightforward for guests to purchase photos and things like that after the fact. For example, Six Flags lets you have access to the pictures on your phone with a watermark, so you can pay for them later if you decide to. Making people stand in the sun. One way to make waiting in a sluggish line even worse is making it happen under the heat of the sun. When parks cut corners to get a simple switchback queue in the sun, guests are stuck with no other options, and they might remember their sunburn on the way home more than their ride on that roller coaster. Closing rides and queues early. When rides close early, even a few minutes before closing, without any communication, you send guests home with a bad taste in their mouth. If the log ride closes a few hours before park closing, that's fine, as long as it's communicated. When a ride breaks down 3 hours before closing and a park leaves it closed the remainder of the day because it would just be easier to wait, the park tells guests that they are inconveniences to the park. When the ride operators close a ride's line a few minutes before park closing because they don't want to have to stay later, they're telling guests that they are nuisances standing between the ride operators and getting home. And the last memory guests have in that theme park is being rejected because someone wanted to cut a corner. Turns out sending guests home feeling cheated isn't a great strategy to have high returning numbers. Dirty parks and restrooms. Dirty parks and restrooms are obviously a huge gut punch to guests, especially when you're dealing with a gross public restroom. Employees frustrated with or ignoring guests who just want to go home. There's almost no way faster to make you feel like the enemy of the park when you're on the receiving side of rude or condescending remarks from park employees or staff who seem frustrated that you stop to ask them a question. On the flip side, there's almost no faster way to heal someone's perception of a park than by going out of your way as an employee to help them by answering a question. I remember when I worked at Knott's Berry Farm, on my way to my post before and after breaks, I passed a beautiful and large fountain decorated for Christmas time. Almost every time I saw a group or a family where the mom or dad was taking a picture of the rest of their family in front of the fountain, I would always stop and ask, "Do you want me to get a picture with everyone in it?" And they were of course happy with my offer, but since the fountain was tall and a fence stopped photographers from getting far enough back to capture the whole fountain, I lay down completely on the floor every time to get the family with the full fountain in the picture. It was a highlight of my day seeing how surprised they were that a park employee, who they didn't pay or ask for, just fully sprawled out on the floor to take a picture for them. The reason I bring that up is that many of those families could have had a rough or frustrating day in the park with long lines, kids' temper tantrums, ride closures, and so on. But I bet one of the things they went home and remembered and talked about was the employee who went all out for their picture. That is the power that every employee has to alter the guest experience. Lack of compensation when a park fails to deliver. Parks make enemies when guests do not receive the advertised experience because of being stuck on a ride for an hour while it's broken down, early park closure for weather or something else, and so on. And the park doesn't do anything to compensate guests or make up for lost time, especially when that time was lost due to a failure or mistake by the park. They may not legally have to compensate you, but parks make guests feel valued when they do something not just because they have to, but because they want to for their guests. Most theme parks, in my opinion, were founded by great people who had a vision of bringing friends and families together through great entertainment. The parks that people will love and return to the most are those that, now decades later, have held on to or recaptured that vision. They are the parks run by people who want to deliver the best experience they can and find a way to afford it, rather than those who want to make the most money they can and do the bare minimum to make the experience enough that people will pay for it. At the end of the day, I believe that those dedicated to the experience they deliver, if they can make it through the tough financial struggles, will always be the most successful, at least in the long term. What it's all about. I want to share one more story about my time at Knott's Berry Farm before we finish. I loved working at Knott's Berry Farm because I really believed that I was led by great people. One example was I was assigned to work an extra shift for the merchandise department packing Christmas mug goodie bags, and it was basically a festive mug filled with stuff for hot chocolate and other goodies for families and treats and stuff. As we were packing, in walks the head of merchandise for the entire park. And this is one of 7 co-leaders of the park, so big guy, big stuff. And he chats with us for a bit. After a few minutes, he asks the woman in charge, "How much are we selling these for, Donna?" And she says, $19.99. He looked at her super shocked and he said, $20? We're selling these to families. Then he told her that he'd be right back. In a few minutes, he came back with a giant box full of individually wrapped toffees. And he said, "Here, put 7 of these in each mug. That should be better." I was blown away to see that one of the 7 co-chairs of the entire park was bending over backwards to make things in the park make a little more sense for families. I haven't worked at the park for a while now, and maybe things have changed, but I know that right then I trusted the management at Knott's Berry Farm. And every time I went back as a guest, I felt like I was in good hands because the people in charge were not asking, "How much can we squeeze out of them?" but rather asking, "How much can we afford to do for them?" You may not run a theme park, but you have a tremendous power to ask yourself the same thing and turn an ordinary day for someone into a memorable and great day by asking if you can do something a little unexpected to go a little out of your way for someone who may need it.
Anyway, enough of the mushy stuff. Now I want to know.
Have any of these enemy makers happened to you? If so, tell me in the comments which ones and which park you were at. I'm curious what the trends are at other parks around the country. Also, if there are any enemy makers that you thought of that I missed, add them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And remember, at your next park visit, you also have the power to improve someone's park experience. And that's a wrap on this video. If you liked the video, please like it. And if you're new here and want to stay in the loop for more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, and it would really help out the channel too. Here's what's up at Jimmy Does Coasters. I make content about things like park and coaster ratings, park improvements, roller coaster POVs, park predictions, monthly news, and more. I make a new video every week, and whenever I have an available slot to fill, I let you vote on which video should come next. I also post a weekly YouTube poll for Matchup Monday to let subscribers vote on some of the biggest coaster debates, which will tally up at the end of the year for a recap. Also, if you want a sneak peek of my rough draft schedule for the next few weeks, you can check the banner photo on my channel's homepage. I'll keep that updated as new videos roll out. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and if you want to follow me there, my handles are in the video description. If you made it to this point of the video, you're awesome, you're a real one. Have an awesome day, and I hope your next coaster ride isn't too far away.